Hello readers, I'm Amy, and today we're doing a mini wrap-up. So if you don't know already, my last wrap-up, which was my full monthly wrap-up for June, will be my last whole month wrap-up. I read 16 books in June. It's hard to remember all the details for those. It's hard to be as excited about them as I am about the books that I'm currently reading. And whenever I think, oh, I read 16 books in June, then I start thinking about having to talk about all of those books at once and trying to remember all of that stuff, and it just makes me put it off longer and longer, which is why that review has come out in the middle of July. So I'm going to restructure my wrap-ups. Basically, right now I have 6 books written down that I've read so far in July. I have filmed individual reviews for 3 of them, so I'm only going to be talking about 3 books. I'm not going to address the other 3 books because I've already talked about them, just repetitive content. So that's going to be my reviews from here, my wrap-ups from here on out. So I imagine I'm going to do a wrap-up every, say, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how many books I read. It's also going to put less pressure on me now that I am really into my graphic design classes. I'm just not going to have as much reading time, so then I'll be less stressed out about trying to remember all of these books or all of these different plots on books that took me a while to get through. So let's go ahead and get started with this. First, I'm going to talk about To Be Taught, If Fortunate. I love watching Emily Fox's videos. She's like the queen of sci-fi on BookTube, and she was really excited about this. It's a science fiction novella. I enjoy science fiction. I do struggle with it a bit as a genre. It's just a lot of them don't have as much world building as I would like. They tend to be more character focused, which can be a little frustrating when I don't really understand the drive of the characters, when I don't really understand the world of the characters. But I'm trying to read more science fiction so I can have a better understanding of it. I do enjoy it. And this month, for the Devour Your TBR challenge on Goodreads that I'm doing, we are doing Sci-Fi July, which means reading more science fiction books. This is hopefully going to give me a chance to start finishing up the Robot series by Isaac Asimov. And I have a lot of sci-fi books on my TBR that I just haven't gotten to. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna focus on those. And To Be Taught, If Fortunate really changed the sci-fi novella pattern for me. Like I said, I'm used to sci-fi's not having as much world building as I would like. Especially sci-fi novellas tend to not go well for me. But I really, really loved this. This is written by Becky Chambers. She did, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet or something. I haven't read any of those books yet. Now I'm thinking I should, because this book, we follow these people on their space journey going from planet to planet as they're studying different life forms on these planets, and you don't really need a lot of world building for that. It is, as is kind of typical with sci-fi, it is very character focused, but knowing that they come from Earth, things are fairly familiar about that particular Earth. They're just like, oh, here are some new life forms that we're learning a bit about. Here's a little bit about the science that we're using. It felt pretty familiar to me, so I didn't feel like I needed all of that world building, and I did really love this. Also, if you're looking for some sci-fi with diversity, you'll want to pick this up. It is not explicitly stated. Not that it should necessarily be explicitly stated, because we shouldn't need to have people be like, look, here's some diversity. No, it should just be put into the book. And it was. Like, you can tell this is a person of color. This person is trans. Like, you don't have to have the whole explanation for it. They just are. And that was really nice to see. So if you're looking for a sci-fi novella that feels a little more comfortable, if you're like me and you can struggle with the genre a little bit, pick up To Be Taught, If Fortunate. I really, really enjoyed this one. Then there was Mexican Gothic. This book has gotten a lot of hype, and honestly, I don't really think it deserves the hype. Sorry if that's a super unpopular opinion. So for Mexican Gothic, I was expecting something kind of like Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and it did have those Rebecca vibes. I imagine it also had some Jane Eyre vibes. I haven't read that book myself yet. It is on my list of Bronte books to get through eventually. But it had that dark, gothic, thrillery, historical fiction bit to it, and I was enjoying that. But endings don't usually ruin books for me. but the ending for this book ruined it for me. It's like you go in expecting a historical fiction, and instead you end up with like an urban fantasy, and it just wasn't what I expected. It's not really what I wanted to see. It's not the kind of storyline that I'm super into. I really want to talk about my, I think, kind of funny summary for this book, but it would be super spoilery. But just know, the ending was not my thing. I understand a lot of people do really enjoy this book, but no one book is for everybody, you know? And the last book I'm going to talk about, so recently I did an update on my views on poetry, my thoughts on poetry, and someone in the comments had recommended American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. This was written by Terrence Hayes. All of the poems in this book are titled American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. They all have the same title. It's talking about Black culture, it's talking about this man's life experiences, it's talking about Trump. This whole poetry selection is aimed at Trump and how Trump affects his life and how people like Trump affect his life. And it was really good. It was definitely, I appreciate the rec. Thank you to the person who gave me that recommendation. I did really enjoy this. It was the kind of poetry that I really like. I did end up listening to the audiobook instead of the ebook. I got both in case the audiobook wouldn't work out. But as you may know, if you've watched that video, I'm finding poetry is better when it's read aloud for me. And this book was no exception. I really enjoyed it. It's read by the author himself. I think he had a lot of really powerful things to say. So if you're dabbling a bit in poetry and you have similar tastes to mine, again, you can find out by watching my video that would be linked above, then you should totally check this out. So that is it for my little mini wrap up. I'm not going to talk right now about books that I'm currently reading. I might go ahead and add that into future mini wrap-ups. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to kind of feel out this structure and see how it goes. So please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media, and I'll see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.